From the very first scene of Inglourious Basterds, one thing becomes undeniable. There is something different about this performance. Something electric. The man at the centre of it all, standing tall in his SS uniform, is not just a character. He is something else entirely. He's a spectre, a force of nature, a man of contradictions, charming yet ruthless, polite yet monstrous. He is Hans Landa.
Yeah, they call you the German too.
Precisely.
Brought to life in a way no one could have possibly expected. And the man behind this spellbinding performance? Christoph Waltz. Before Inglourious Basterds, Waltz was virtually unknown outside of German-speaking cinema. But Quentin Tarantino, a director renowned for his larger-than-life characters and razor-sharp dialogue, needed something special. He needed a performance so magnetic, so effortlessly terrifying, that it would define an entire film. What he got was something far greater, a performance that transcended cinema itself. This is the story of how Christoph Waltz turned a role that was once considered unplayable into one of the greatest acting achievements of all time. Quentin Tarantino always knew that Inglourious Basterds would live or die by one man, Colonel Hans Landa. Landa wasn't just another Nazi villain, he was something else entirely. A linguist, a manipulator, a man whose weapon wasn't just a gun, but language itself. In the script, Landa was terrifyingly intelligent, fluent in multiple languages, and possessed an almost supernatural ability to control a conversation. He had to be both mesmerising and horrifying, charming enough to lull his victims into a false sense of security, yet ruthless enough to shatter it in an instant. But there was a problem. Tarantino simply couldn't find the right actor. He auditioned dozens of talented performers, but no one could capture the essence of Landa. The character was too complex, too demanding. Tarantino even began to fear that he had written an unplayable role. Without the right Landa, there was no movie.
In walks Christoph Waltz. You know, he was speaking in French, then he went to English, and at a certain point he went into German, and then he went into a little Italian. And Quentin and I just looked at each other and our jaws were down on our knees. We just could not believe it. And he walked out of the room and we just high-fived each other.
That's a bingo.
At the time, Waltz was a veteran of European television and theatre. He had spent decades honing his craft, delivering strong performances in German-language productions, but he was far from a household name.
Tell me where your acting life was when you got this script from Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, you know, for the region, it was satisfyingly okay. For me as a person, it was frustratingly not okay.
He wasn't a Hollywood star. He wasn't a Tarantino regular. He was an unknown. And yet, when he walked into that audition room and delivered his first few lines as Hans Landa, something happened. Tarantino later described it as a revelation. In a single moment, he realised that Waltz wasn't just playing Landa, he was Landa. The unplayable had been played. In Waltz, Tarantino had found not just an actor, but a phenomenon. If you want to understand the brilliance of Christoph Waltz's performance, you need only to watch the first scene of Inglourious Basterds. It is without question one of the greatest opening sequences in modern cinema, and at its heart, it is nothing more than just a conversation. A conversation between two men sitting at a wooden table in a quiet French farmhouse. Waltz's Landa is disarmingly polite, his smile warm and his manner almost playful. He compliments the farmer, Pierre Lapidite, on his daughters. He drinks milk with delight. He speaks with the elegance that feels entirely out of place for a Nazi officer. But something is wrong. We see it in his eyes, the way his words are just a little too measured, the way his pauses stretch just a second too long, the way he subtly shifts the power dynamic, trapping Lapidite in a web of polite conversation that is slowly, methodically tightening around his throat. Landa already knows the truth. The Jewish family is hiding beneath the floorboards, and yet he plays his game to perfection, allowing his prey to squirm, to struggle, to hope, before finally, inevitably, closing his grip.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
The fate of the hidden family is sealed. There are no screams, no outbursts, just Landa's quiet satisfaction as he signals for the execution. It is a scene that could have been played with brute force, with anger, with menace. But Waltz plays it with something far more chilling: ease. Hans Landa is not a man burdened by his actions. He's not haunted by morality or duty. He's simply enjoying himself. And that is what makes him so terrifying. Landa is unlike any Nazi villain we've seen before. He does not shout, he does not scowl, he smiles, and most of all, he talks. Dialogue is Landa's greatest weapon. In any given conversation, he's in complete control. Not just because of what he says, but how he says it.
Lassen Sie mich Ihren Fuß sehen.
Watch closely and you'll see Walt's mastery of linguistic manipulation at work. He switches between languages effortlessly, using them not just as a means of communication, but as a tactic. When he speaks French in the opening scene, it is warm and inviting. When he switches to English, it is cold and transactional. Every language is a tool, every word is a choice. Waltz understands that Landa does not need to threaten anyone. His very presence is a threat. His ability to speak your language, to mirror your mannerisms, to make you feel at ease before striking, that is his true power. It is a power that Waltz wields with a precision that is almost hypnotic. For all his brilliance, Landa is not a man of ideology. He's not driven by hate, nor by loyalty to the Reich. He's above all else a survivor. And this is where Waltz's performance becomes even more fascinating. In the final act of the film, Landa does something unthinkable. He betrays the Nazis. He sees the war coming to an end. Instead of going down with a sinking ship, he negotiates his way out. He's not a fanatic. He's not a martyr. He's a man who will always choose self-preservation. But when his deal is finally sealed, when he's granted his freedom and his new life in America, he smiles once more. But this time, it is not the charming smile of a manipulator. It is the smug smile of a man who believes he has won. Until, of course, Aldo Rain gives him his final mark, the swastika carved into his forehead, a permanent reminder of the role he played, a fate worse than death for a man who built his life on slipping away unscathed. As Landa screams in horror, the mask finally shatters, and Christoph Waltz, in one last breathtaking moment, cements his place in cinematic history. Christoph Waltz's portrayal is not just a performance, it is a phenomenon. With Inglourious Basterds, Waltz did not just bring the villain to life, he created something far greater. A monster wrapped in a charm, a devil disguised as a gentleman. It is a performance that won him an Oscar, a performance that made him an instant Hollywood icon, a performance that redefined what a villain could be. But most of all, it is a performance that lingers. Because once you've watched Christoph Waltz's Hans Landa, you will never forget him. And that is the mark of true cinematic greatness.